Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm your host, Lori Lee, and I have a question for you. Have you ever self-sabotaged? Are you aware of your own limiting beliefs? Well, today, Thais Gibson, the founder of the Personal Development School, and I are going to talk in detail. We are going to get schooled on these topics. And this is really cool to get to talk with Thais about this because this Ph.D. candidate has a decade of experience helping over 30,000 clients, and her private practice has a 2-year waiting list. Can you imagine? This girl knows what she's talking about. So getting to have this one-on-one class discussion with her on self-sabotage is going to be super cool. Stay tuned to start dissecting self-sabotage and limiting beliefs with the head teacher from the Personal Development School. Stories are our lives in language. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm Lori Lee, and I'm excited for our future together of telling stories, evaluating our own stories, and lifting ourselves and others to greater places because of our control over our stories. This podcast is about empowerment and giving you, the listener, ideas to work with in making your stories work for you. Story power serves you best when you know how to use it. Thais Gibson is certified in cognitive behavioral therapy, in neuro-linguistic programming, in somatic experiencing, which is a form of therapy aimed at treating trauma and stress-related disorders, which is so huge right now. So this is big stuff. She has certified in a bunch of other therapy and self-development disciplines as well, 13 in total, I believe. And she has 38 million views on social media. I started following her on Instagram once we had set this up and I had gained an interest in her. And it's fun to watch her great educational clips as she discusses mental health ideas. So Thais, let's bring that to my audience. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Me too. So how did you get into this work? What is your story?
Well, I think from a very young age, I was really curious about relationships. So, I learned a lot about different attachment styles and how they really have the ability to impact us. And one thing that we came across is that, when you're going through your relationships in your life, if you have an experience of saying, okay, I want to struggle less with resentment, or I want to, be able to manage my emotions or my anger better and not yell at my partner or whatever it might be, these sort of ideas that we have. And, we find ourselves going back and repeating the same old patterns of behavior over and over and over again. Well, that form of self-sabotage is basically demonstrating the relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind. Your conscious mind intends one thing, and your subconscious mind has a different set of priorities. So I grew up in a household where there was a lot of chaos, a lot of drama and fighting, really, really big divorce that lasted for a very long time. It's like still kind of going on 20 years later. And so, it's one of those situations where I grew up wondering, like, why do things have to be this way? And, I also heard a lot of things like, oh, we're not going to fight so much. We're not going to fight in front of you kids anymore. We're sorry. And then the patterns would repeat. And so I spent a lot of time at a young age wondering, like, why do people say one thing and you can tell that their intentions are true, but there's something else different that keeps happening. And so I got really interested in the subconscious mind because early on, I learned that your conscious mind is responsible for roughly 3 to 5% of your beliefs, your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions.
Wow,
and
that's fascinating.
Yes,
right?
And your subconscious mind is 95 to 97%. So we have this idea that like our conscious mind can intend one thing, but your subconscious mind is running the show at the end of the day. And also your conscious mind cannot outwill or overpower your subconscious mind. It can only reprogram it or recondition it. So there's this dynamic of when we're like, oh, New Year's resolution, I'm going to quit eating chocolate. And then we go back to eating chocolate, or I'm going to go to the gym every day, go back to, our old patterns of sitting on the couch too much, or, all these different things we can say. That's really exemplifying the difference between our conscious and subconscious mind. Our conscious mind intends, and our subconscious mind has different needs, different programming, and different priorities. And that's where we kind of lose that battle in the relationship to ourselves.
So then the big question for me becomes, if the subconscious mind is so powerful, is the subconscious mind formed exclusively when we're children? Like all of those patterns when we're little, and really our brains like developed at that time. So we're even interpreting things incorrectly as children, So, I mean, when is that formed?
So the subconscious mind is getting reformed all the time. We are very open to being programmed as people. And, research will demonstrate that we're most suggestible, meaning that we're sort of in this space where we're most likely to obtain programs quite quickly between the ages of 0 to 8 years old. So that's absolutely when we're going to form like the vast majority of our programs. But the subconscious mind gets reprogrammed through repetition plus emotion plus imagery. So anything that we're seeing where there's like a visual representation of an experience that affects us emotionally, and that it's repetitive, that's actually going to change our programming. So for example, if somebody grew up in a really stable household from, 0 to 15 years old, but then there was so much chaos after 15 years old, and maybe they had parents who became very critical, as an example, that person who's a 15-year-old teenager may form a lot of limiting beliefs about themselves. Things like, oh, I'm not good enough, because they're repeatedly exposed to this experience through repetition and emotion. And of course, there's just natural imagery there because we're seeing our experience, but we'll actually be able to obtain new programs. And so one of the big questions that I was faced with is like, okay, so if we're being programmed all the time, and especially if we have, programs that may be working against us that we may have adopted from earlier childhood experiences that we didn't ask for, we didn't necessarily want, how can we change our programming intentionally to match what we do want rather than just sort of be a slave to our past programming?
Yes. And is that what you teach?
All of the information.
That's the whole thing.
Basically, yeah, like it's all the personal development school, like personal development for your subconscious mind. It was one thing I was kind of a little bit not against, but I just felt like a lot of, like I went the sort of Western world of education originally. And I felt like there was just so much missing in terms of like how we can actually, I felt like talk therapy wasn't giving real answers and solutions. I felt like, hey, like if we have talk therapy, that might be good from a processing perspective. And obviously there can be benefits, but there's a lot of limitations in the fact that if we're not changing the patterns that are causing us pain, then, are we really seeing a lot of momentum? Is there really a lot of results happening from that? And so when I really learned about the subconscious mind, my first major certification was in hypnotherapy. So I did this year-long program in like hypnosis, and I didn't love like the power dynamics in hypnotizing people. I felt like it was like give a man a fish rather than teach the man to fish. And so I got really interested in how can we teach people and educate people on their own subconscious mind, how it works, how to reprogram so people can be empowered to change their own patterns through doing a little bit of self-work on a regular basis.
And so what are the primary tools that help people have success in that?
So there's a lot. There's about 20 major ways you can reprogram your subconscious mind. And they actually, are different depending on your temperament. It's not that some of them work and don't work. They all work, but people who are visual learners, for example, are going to do better with more visually oriented tools. People who really feel a lot of their emotions are going to do a lot better with like some of the emotional reprogramming tools. People who are very analytical are going to do a lot better with something called exposure reprogramming. So there's different ways we can reprogram based on our experiences. So maybe we could go through and do some examples of tools in a little bit to give somebody like a take-home tool if they're listening or something along those lines. But there's lots of different avenues for how we can really recondition what's not working for us.
Okay, so what do you do with your clients then? Like if, for instance, I have some people that I know who are really struggling with subconscious things that they took on when they were children, and they're super self-aware. So one in particular person I'm thinking of, and he says, I know this is where it's coming from, and cognitively, I know that that's not accurate anymore. I'm aware of it, but it's still being this source from where this pain and this self-loathing and whatnot is coming from. How, if somebody comes to you with that, what do you do?
And that's like what you just said is like exactly what was so amazing to me is that I would hear things where people were becoming self-aware and more insightful. And they'd be like, I know that this is coming from childhood. The conscious mind knows, but the subconscious mind is still in those patterns. So if you feel comfortable sharing about that person, we can even go through like an example exactly of like what we would do and how we can reprogram it. Did they say like the program they wanted to overcome was self-loathing?
Yes.
Or fear of abandonment? Like what was it specifically that they were experiencing?
The specific their story was when they were growing up, they grew up in a strict moral environment where they were taught specifically to stay away from pornography and to control their sexual urges and all this type of thing. And then that it was very bad to be exposed to pornography. And then inevitably in this world, that ends up happening. And so then as a child, they feel very badly about themselves and feel like they're unworthy. And so they hide it, that they had been exposed or seen things of that nature. And then as they grow, they just grow up with this feeling of self-loathing and reproach that they're a bad person because they had been exposed to that type of thing. And as an adult, they can look at that and say, I know that it's coming from here. And I know that that doesn't define my self-worth and et cetera. But now I can't get over feeling like I'm worthless.
So we'll go down a rabbit hole here. I love this example. So we'll break it down into two parts. Okay. So what I hear in there is there's the pornography experience where somebody may feel, and maybe this wasn't exactly their experience, but we're talking about like almost like addicted or reliant on pornography itself. And then there's the self-loathing part where there's this dynamic of like how that person comes to be impacted in terms of their own self-esteem. So the two biggest things that happen to us all the time at our subconscious level that are really like running us and how we are and how we show up and how we feel about our lives are our beliefs and our needs. Okay. So the subconscious mind is a needs meeting machine. It's designed to get needs met all of the time. And if we try to push those needs down or repress them, they are going to come out anyways. Okay. Our subconscious mind will find roundabout ways of getting our needs met. So when I saw people have like over dependency or an unhealthy relationship to pornography, if we just start with the needs, what's really interesting is usually people who are going to pornography actually have deeply unmet needs that pornography is fulfilling, hence that fostering of dependency. A lot of the needs related to pornography are things like connection, novelty, control, because what you're seeing is that somebody can kind of control their own experience and what they're doing, right? At the click of a mouse. And then they also have this sense of novelty and connection. Now, what often happens is if we don't have this self-belief or we don't feel safe being seen or connecting to other people in an authentic way, then we're starving for these needs. And so the longer that we don't have a relationship to these needs, the more our subconscious mind will always try to get its needs met in the fastest way possible. And pornography is a very easy, quick, convenient way to get those needs met. So I've never actually seen somebody who didn't first struggle with some sort of dependency on pornography or like fostering an unhealthy relationship to pornography without first struggling with those needs. So that's sort of root cause. The subconscious mind is yearning for those needs. It meets those needs all at the same time. The other part is that we are also struggling with our beliefs. Now, you're not going to struggle with your needs for connection if you don't first believe that you're not worthy of connection or that you're unlovable or that if people see you, they won't like you. But then there's a sort of secondary layer of the limiting beliefs that we have in his case that you were talking about, as a result of the judgment about pornography. So we have different core wounds that are happening for all of us. There's about 18 major core wounds. And they're sort of these ideas or like root cause limiting beliefs that we'll experience in our childhood. So some really common ones related to shame are I am bad, I am unworthy, and I am defective, as if like something's wrong with me at my core. And what happens is when we have this experience of having these big shame wounds, we don't want to be seen. If you ever feel the emotion of shame, what do you want to do? You want to hide, you want to get away. Yeah. So, what's probably happening is there's this vicious cycle where he's got the unmet needs of like connection, novelty, control. And if he has all these limiting beliefs about himself, well, he's not going to want to let anybody in for that connection in the first place, right? Because God forbid they see me, they're going to see I'm bad, I'm unworthy, and something's wrong with me or I'm defective. And so it becomes a sort of vicious cycle in a person's subconscious programming where the conscious mind says, I'm going to kick pornography to the curb. This isn't benefiting my life. But the subconscious says, well, I'm bad. I'm unworthy. I'm defective at my core. And so we don't want to let people in. So then guess what happens? I keep my unmet needs for connection. And then I go back to not feeling safe in my ability to connect. And so I go back to my use of pornography because the subconscious is starving for those needs. So there's two things we always want to do in these types of situations. We want to be able to isolate those core wounds, like I am bad, I'm unworthy, I'm defective. We want to recondition those core wounds using subconscious reprogramming tools. And then when those core wounds are out of the way and they're not blocking us from getting our needs met for connection, for novelty, for a sense of control or safety in the way that we connect with others, then all of a sudden we can come up with healthier, updated ways of getting the needs met. So, getting the needs met for connection through being more vulnerable with people in our lives and being more emotionally available to people and letting people see us and letting people in. getting novelty met through going on new experiences with people in different ways, like a new restaurant or a new hike or a new date, or, but the more we can get the needs met in healthier, updated forms while reprogramming these limiting beliefs that are there, that's actually how we kick a lot of these problems to the curb. And it's ultimately like reconditioning the relationship we have to our needs and the relationship we have to those core wounds or ideas about ourselves.
So how long does it take to recondition those core wounds or core beliefs that, I think even logically people can look at them and say, I know I'm not worthless, but I feel that way. How long does it take to reprogram something like that? Because when we're often talking about affirmations and thinking positive, and when you genuinely don't believe something, it doesn't matter how many affirmations you say, it's not going to shift anything, So what do you do to actually make serious progress in reprogramming?
It takes 21 days to reprogram our limiting beliefs if we do it properly. So I don't believe in affirmations too much, I'll be honest. So, and here's why. Your conscious mind speaks in language. Your subconscious mind speaks in emotion and imagery. So if I say to you, Lori, whatever you do not think of the pink elephant. Like your conscious mind heard the do not, your subconscious saw the pink elephant. It was too late. There was nothing you could do. So, and where these limiting beliefs are, they're not conscious limiting beliefs. We don't sit down and say, I'm going to tell myself all day today that I feel like I am worthless. I'm going to tell myself throughout the day today that I'm unlovable and everybody's just going to abandon me. Like, these are not conscious choices. These are subconscious autopiloted programs because of the conditioning that we've had from past experiences. So when we try to just like do affirmations, I find that there's very poor results for people on things like that because the problem is subconscious and we're trying to fix it at the conscious level. So instead, one of the first tools that's a very great introductory tool for reprogramming limiting beliefs is called autosuggestion. And so the idea here is that when we are using autosuggestion, we would start with this limiting belief. So if it's I am bad, it can be I am innocent. I'm not good enough. I'm good enough. I am going to be abandoned. I will be connected. So we pick these big core wounds. I am unworthy. I'm worthy. And what we want to do is for 21 days, because this is how long it takes to fire and wire strong new neural networks, we want to find the opposite of this wound, and we want to come up with 10 pieces of memory to oppose it. Okay. Why memory? Because every memory we have is a container for emotion and imagery. If I say to you, tell me your favorite childhood memory, you would start talking about it and you would smile because you would feel the emotion. And in your mind's eye, you would picture that experience. If it was like, oh, I was playing on the playground with my friend, and you would feel the emotion and you would see the images. And so what we can do is we can leverage autosuggestion to use our conscious mind to recondition our subconscious mind. So now that you sort of understand the principles, let's just say for ease's sake, I'm going to say, I am not good enough. I am good enough. 10 reasons I am good enough, okay, existing in past memory. They can be recent memory. It can be as small as like I got out of bed on my first alarm this morning, or I showed up really great as a friend yesterday when someone needed me, or I hashed out a conversation that was difficult to have. And every time we come up with this piece of evidence or memory, okay, it has emotion and imagery within it. So 10 pieces of memory to oppose the core wound for 21 days. And doing that has the incredible capacity to help us shed so many different core wounds that we may have otherwise been living with for decades that can be dramatically affecting our lives.
That sounds really cool. And it sounds a lot like this. Excuse me while I get this little box. So this is what I call an evidence box. And the idea, it's got all these little cards in it. The idea was in dealing with imposter syndrome, right? So this one that I did, I just did it on my writing career. And it was so sometimes when I feel like, oh, I'm not as good of a writer as I think I am. But you sit down, you take this whole thing of cards. And for me, these were all the things like that I've published or book signings and TV shows I've been on about my books and poetry workshops and awards and master's degree, like all of this stuff about my writing career, taught writing at a university. Like, so when I start feeling like a poser, you take this evidence box and you go through it all and you read all of these things that support that you're not an imposter.
You're the
an
opposite
imposter.
of the core wound that's there. Now, I will say that's exactly like amazing, like that you're on that space. if you want to stop feeling like the imposter, period,
Yeah.
you read 10 of them on a daily basis, feel about them, and see the images of those things, really sit in it 10 times a day for 21 days, and you won't have to keep rereading the evidence box later on. If you can do it in a structured way where you fire and wire those neural networks for long enough, neural pathways atrophy kind of like muscles. Like if you don't use your bicep muscle, it gets smaller. Neural networks also atrophy over time. So when we keep reinvesting in this new neural network here, firing and wiring and firing and wiring for that 21 days, we're not refeeding this old one. And that's how we can actually like kind of seal the deal once and for all, where those things don't come back, rather than like having the evidence box just for when you're feeling like the imposter syndrome. It's like, no. We're going to kick imposter syndrome to the curb once and for all. And you're already on this beautiful track of having all, like, I can't believe how many pieces of evidence you had in there too, like
right?
cards and cards. So, like that's amazing. You're already set up, just rereading them 10 of them a day, feeling about them on a daily basis. That will really make a positive shift.
I love that tool because it's so hands-on. Like it's something everybody can do, right? So when somebody's listening to this and wants to work with you, like what do you do at the school? Do you meet with them individually so you can like individualize what they do? What do you do?
Yeah. So at this point, our school's grown a lot. So we have about 7,500 active students. And basically there's 60 different courses there. And every single course and topic is about personal development for the subconscious mind. So if it's a boundaries thing, we talk about reconditioning your relationship to boundaries. If it's communication, there's tools for actually conditioning in new patterns of communication. And we basically take everything that we do and we apply it to like, how do we take these learnings and these concepts? So yes, you get the insight, but it's not just conscious mind work. Oh, I understand myself better now. Yeah, but how do you change it? And so every topic in there is at the subconscious level. And then what we have is we have a team. So I do 4 live webinars a week with our students where we go through open Q&A, people who come in have questions, or I do like bonus presentations. And then we actually have a team of facilitators, counselors, coaches who do a daily event. So we have like social events where people can practice things. We have daily webinars every day. And basically, like I am a big believer in like teach a man to fish. Like one thing I really didn't like when I was first running my client practice is I just felt like, I was like, I don't want to have people have to be dependent. Like, I don't want to have people come in and feel like, oh, I'm seeing all this progress, but I have to keep coming for the progress. I wanted to send people out on their way. Like, you can fly on your own, So, all of sort of the premise of the personal development school is to teach people exactly what they need to know for the basics of how their subconscious works, how to reprogram things, and how to find where those limiting beliefs are. So like if you're sabotaging something, for example, why? How can I find my own limiting beliefs? How can I find my own unmet needs? And then do the reconditioning work to be able to feel like I get this inside out on my own.
And how long does that usually take? It's probably different per person, but
it's very different.
How long do people stay in the school?
It's really cool. Like we've definitely had people stick around for a long time, but it's like usually people come in for one issue. Okay. So like usually it's to become securely attached if they're an insecure attachment style, or to like break through a career limitation. And usually people will get results quite quickly from that. And then because we have 60 different courses and topics, often what ends up happening is people are like, oh, now I want to learn how to reprogram my boundaries and what that's all about over there, or my communication and what that's all about. And so it sort of allows people to go on their way and like check in with different areas of life to really get those results. And then what we'll see a lot is people will be like, okay, I feel like I'm in a great space. They'll leave. And then if 6 months later, something new comes up in their life, they'll come in to kind of tackle that. So we have like a really great sense of community and like really awesome people. And it's cool too, because we do a lot of stuff in like group environments. So people build these cool relationships. They practice stuff with each other. They build these nice friendships. So it's been a really cool experience to be a part of.
Do you feel like with that many students, you get to know them all, or you just have enough providers that not everybody knows you, or do you work with everyone?
I would say like I get to really know a lot of people, largely because like not everybody comes into the webinars. So we get the same like the bunch of people who's always in the webinars. And if people just come in, they just want the courses, that's good. That's on them. They don't have to like attend for anything, but we get the same like 150 people a lot in the webinars. And so for our 7,500 students, like not many people are actually attending. Those are my webinars. And we have like other people with different time zones and stuff like that. So So I guess like a lot of people end up using the webinars in total because they're like 6 days a week and sometimes twice a day. But I feel like I get to know people's stories. Like they come in, they say, I did have the conversation with my mom last week and I am reconditioning my communication. So I will get to see like a lot of that unfold, which is really cool. And I definitely really remember people's stories. I have a terrible memory with like directions or like things like that. But people's stories, I feel like I never forget them. So that's been a really cool thing to watch people's journeys and sort of see them expand and grow as well.
Stories are so powerful. Do you have any in particular stories of success stories with your students that you would want to share?
Yes, I'll share a really vulnerable one. And I'm sure this person would love for me to like share her name because she's so open and she always shares, but just to like protect her privacy in case I won't. But she's a very, very lovely person. And she came into PDS and she didn't use her real name. She was very private at first. And she used like sort of a pseudonym, like a different name. And a lot of people come in and put their initials. And in the webinars, they don't always come on camera. People can stay off camera if they want, just sort of listen in and speak in the chat. Anyway, she came in and she was using a different name. And you could tell it was hard for her to be vulnerable. And her challenge was actually that she was sexually abused as a child by her father. And I remember hearing about this. She kind of like eventually shared, and it was so vulnerable and so hard for her. And one of the biggest things she was working on was to be vulnerable and be able to trust people, be open with people, all of this. And so this is about 2.5, 3 years ago that she joined. Anyways, over time, she did so much reprogramming work. And I think she just really took to it. Like, I think it was like in alignment with like her as a person. Like she really took to these tools. And, within 6 months, she was like on camera, sharing everything, participating all the time. And she actually went back to school to do her master's degree. And she's now a therapist and she's now working with people and she's forgiven her family. And she's like in this really, really beautiful place. And she's just like, I feel like she's in all the webinars still because she just like loves it. And she like helps people and she supports people. And she's always like there in the chat. And she's just like such a staple in the community. And she came from like so much suffering and such a hard thing. And like, it's just been so like, I always think of her, as one of the first people when I think of the stories, because she's just such a beautiful, I've got to see her really, really thrive and sort of flower over the past few years.
Oh, Thais, that's the reason you do it. Isn't that's the beautiful stuff right there. Oh, it's a great story.
Yeah.
So I just want to open it up to you and say anything about self-sabotage that we should know instead of me just, dialing in on these questions. I'm going to open this last up before we sign off. What do you want to teach us about self-sabotage?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the first part is that, there's no such real thing as self-sabotage. Like, it's not like our conscious mind is like, oh, today I'm going to make sure I go to the gym after work. And then, halfway through the day, you're like, you know what, today I can't wait to sabotage myself. I'm going to intentionally sabotage myself. Like, we're not experiencing self-sabotage in the way that our self is actually sabotaging ourselves. What's actually happening is our conscious mind intends one thing. Our subconscious mind is much stronger and much more impactful, and it has different needs or it has different beliefs. So what happens is the friction we experience between our conscious intentions and our subconscious programs is what the actual experience of self-sabotage is. And so it's almost always boiling down to sort of summarize it to our limiting beliefs and our unmet needs. And I'll give you a couple of examples that the listeners might be able to really resonate with. So let's say somebody says, I'm going to start a business. Okay. I've always wanted to start my own business. That's what I'm going to do. And then they find themselves like putting it on the back burner for years and never really starting or never really like following through on things. Well, one of the first things I get people to do is say, okay, well, what are all the reasons why I haven't started my business yet? And all of their reasons why, their excuses, their buts are usually just their limiting beliefs about themselves. Things like, I don't have enough time. What if I fail? What if I don't have enough financial stability? I'm not good enough. I'm not capable. These limiting beliefs. So what we do is we like isolate those limiting beliefs. We plug them into reprogramming tools like the auto suggestion we talked about or any other ones. And we do reprogramming on those limiting beliefs. So now our conscious mind and our subconscious just took a huge step towards being in alignment and working with each other rather than in friction and accidentally working against each other. And so we remove the limiting beliefs so our subconscious can start lining up with our conscious mind's intentions. The other thing that happens is we have to get our needs on board. Sometimes we will not take action towards goals or intentions our conscious mind has because we're scared at a deeper subconscious level that it's going to take time away from other needs that we have. So an example is I had this client, and she had these big New Year's resolutions every year. And one day she came in and she was like, I really want to work on my New Year's resolutions, because every year I say, I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to make sure I take better care of myself. And by like day 5, I'm back to my old patterns again. And what we found is that these big needs that she had she was prioritizing in her life, and these are a big part of our identity. We all have different subconscious needs. We're about social connection, family time, comfort, and security. So when her conscious mind said, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to eat healthier, I'm going to cook differently, her subconscious was like, no, that's going to take time away from family, social connection, and my comfort zone and my sense of security. Going to the gym feels uncomfortable and insecure. And, not being around family and social things, why would I want to do that? And so what we do in those cases is we link those things together. So we find ways of aligning our subconscious needs with our conscious mind's goal. So for her, it was like going on more walks with her family, taking cooking classes with her husband. It was going to group workout classes with friends where there was a social element, joining a hiking club with friends. So there was that social element, learning about exercise or doing home workouts. So she felt comfortable and secure in her own home and in her own comfy clothes. And by doing things on our terms, what we do is we remove the limiting beliefs. If she had any, like, oh, I'm not capable of doing that, or I'm not going to, we recondition those and then we align with our needs. And now we have like a friction-free path because our conscious and subconscious are fully in alignment and we're actually tapping into our true power as a human being.
That sounds so brilliant. I love it. I love the unpacking of it, first of all, to understand it, and then the conscious repacking of it to support you. That's great.
Thank you.
Love it. Where can people find you?
So I am on YouTube. I put daily content out there, Personal Development School Thais Gibson, so THAIS. And then if anybody wants to take a quiz where they can learn about something called their attachment style, which tells them all about their different core wounds, their needs, these different things that will come up in their patterning. There's a free test for that with a big report on it for yourself at personaldevelopmentschool.com.
Cool. I want to do all those things. I feel like that tool, like across the board, would work. Like everybody needs it, right?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite tools. It's like so simple. Like just find the core wounds, do the reprogramming, learn your needs, align your life, and like it literally removes so much friction from people's world.
Well, and even all of the work you're doing, that whole thing, even just learning what your limiting beliefs are. Even if you're super highly functioning, there's going to be things that you intend and want to do, but that they kind of rub up against what what's comfortable to you. And so unpacking all of that, who couldn't do that? We could all do that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Thais. Anything else?
No, that was it. I had a blast with you. Thank you so much for having me. This is a great conversation.
Oh, so glad to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope that you have found one aha or idea that helps you on your journey or inspires you to reach out to Thais or follow her on Instagram so that you can keep learning to navigate your mental health. Gosh, the stuff she talked about today, I feel like we should all just go sign up. I'm going to do that. So yeah, do it. I will have all her contact information in the show notes at www.loveyourstorypodcast.com, along with there's a place to leave a review. You can share a link. You can leave me a voice message there. So let me know what you thought of this episode. And I hope to see you in 2 weeks for our quick chat. Have fun building your best life on purpose. We'll see you then.